Hello Storytellers, welcome to Bound by Words. My name is Madie if we haven't met yet. I am a freelance editor and fantasy writer, and today we are talking about 5 common book marketing pitfalls. 5 things you want to avoid whenever you are getting ready to market and publish your book. But whether you are an experienced writer or an absolute newbie who's in the drafting stage, I would recommend sticking around because if you want to publish one day, you might be able to pick up something from this video that's super useful. Especially because the first common pitfall is starting too late. I have said this before in videos. I know we covered it a little bit in our Author Platform 101 video, and we talked about it briefly whenever we were talking about the different types of author platforms, but I can't say it enough, so I'm going to say it here at the beginning as the first point so that we can move on to the 4 more unique and interesting points. But if you are starting too late, you're really doing yourself a disservice because it takes time to grow an audience. It takes time to get people's eyes on your books and to get people interested. And you know, even if you throw stacks and stacks of money to the best book marketer in the world, a week before your book launch, there's probably little they can do to get a lot of people excited about your book. They can pay to get it in front of a lot of eyes, but they can't really build up that suspense and excitement like you can just being present over time. So you don't want to start too late. And I know that a lot of people get nervous when they're drafting a book and they think, I really want to publish, but I don't know if I want to publish this book. Then start an author platform and market yourself as an author and a creator. Market yourself as somebody who is working on a project even though you don't have a publishing date and you're not really sure about it yet. That's totally fine. It's one of the things we talked about in the 2 different types of author platforms is who you're really grabbing the attention of and why. But if you know you want to publish for sure one day, there is no reason why you shouldn't start now. If you're working on a book and you're unsure if you're going to finish the book, so you think like, I really want to be a published author, but I don't know if this is the book that I'm going to finish, then I totally understand that. We tend to compartmentalize the drafting of the book and then the editing of the book and the marketing of the book. In reality, the marketing of the book should happen the whole time you're editing, even self-editing. So if you're a little bit on the fence of whether or not you want to publish or whether or not you want this to be the next or first book you publish, I think the best place to make that decision is at the end of the first draft. You've already gotten over that I have no idea if I'm going to finish it phase because you did, and you can make the decision then if you really like your story, if you want to move forward with publishing, then you should definitely start marketing. And you know, you might get to the end of the first draft and realize, I love this story and I learned a lot, but I don't want this to be the one that I publish, and move on to something else. That's totally fine too, but that's around the time when you should start marketing your first book. I do want to emphasize that I do mean first draft and not zero draft. I think zero drafts are an amazing tool to help get your book written. I'm a huge fan of them, but a zero draft is sort of like a dumpster fire of like manuscript papers that aren't in order yet. So at the end of your first book, when you have a cohesive story that makes sense, that's when you should make that decision, and that's when you should start getting the gears rolling. Now, when you start marketing, you don't have to, you know, start with paid advertisements. You don't have to start with a book cover. You can start as simple as make social media accounts if you don't have them, create your author website if you don't have them yet. You can even start as simple as I want to pick the colors and the fonts that I'm going to include on those things whenever I move into them. So don't overwhelm yourself in the marketing. Don't, you know, jump headfirst into the deep end if you're just finishing your first draft, but you definitely should get started because you're going to need some time. Even if you're throwing money at the situation, you're going to need some time to grow that audience. But in reality, a lot of us writers don't have, you know, hundreds or thousands of dollars extra to waste on book marketing. We're worried about writing our book and paying for editing because that can be quite expensive. So you want to make sure, you know, you're working smart and not hard, and that does involve some planning ahead. The second pitfall when it comes to book marketing is marketing to everybody. And that's sort of like general, like you're not marketing to everybody, you're marketing to readers, but even marketing to all readers is a bad experience. It's a bad idea. It's going to hurt your sales and it's going to hurt your exposure because a lot of the things that go into the algorithms behind who are we showing what and, you know, how metadata is collected behind the scenes and those technical things, they're very specific. They're very little niches. You don't want to market to all readers if you're a fantasy writer. You want to market to readers, fiction readers, fantasy readers, and then fantasy readers who enjoy books that have your subplots, themes, genre elements. You don't want to market to all fiction readers if you write fantasy because there's so much in fiction that's not fantasy, and you certainly don't want to market to all readers if you write fantasy because not only is there so much just in fiction, but then when you expand to all readers, there's then academia and self-help, and there are 1,000 other genres and things to market in publishing outside of what you're working on now. So don't worry about getting as many eyes on your project as you can. Don't worry about getting all readers' eyes on your project as you can. Worry about getting specific people who are going to be interested in buying, reading, and then talking about your novel. You want their attention, just their attention. And that was a little wordy, but grabbing people's attention who only read fiction romance novels, it's not going to help your platform, it's not going to help your book sales, and it's not going to help your book marketing unless you're writing fiction romance. And inside fiction romance even, there are several different categories when it comes to, degree of spiciness, when it comes to, moral integrity, when it comes to character dynamics. Some people love enemies to lovers, some people hate that, things like that. So whenever you're marketing, make sure that you're being very specific to the small group of people who are going to read your book. It's likely not a small group of people, but you want to narrow it down. You would rather have 1,000 people who read the genre that you write with the themes and tropes that you're using than to have 5 or 10,000 people that are a wide mix of everybody. The people who are going to enjoy your book, who are going to talk about it, who are going to give it those reviews are the people who are specifically interested in that type of book, so market for them. As a little add-on bonus to that statement, look at your audience and what platforms they're on. There are a bunch of different types of marketing, like BookBub does marketing, Facebook ads, YouTube and Google ads, stuff like that. If the people who are in your audience aren't really Googling books, I feel like all readers will Google books at some point because they'll want to know more about a specific book, but I get most of my recommendations from, social media, things people share, other reviews that I hear people say. I don't just look up good books to read on Google. I feel like I've maybe done that once or twice before, but it's not the easiest way to get a book in front of my eyes. So look at your audience and really understand how they're finding books to add to their TBR and use that to your advantage with book marketing. Now, there are people who do Google certain types of books. Like when I'm looking for writing craft books, I will Google, writing craft, self-help. I want to learn this thing. What book's good for it? What can teach me that? But fantasy's not a genre I really do that with. If I see an article that's 10 best fantasy books of this year, I might read it, but it's not necessarily something that I regularly go out of my way to do. And the reason that is because I get so many book recommendations already from things that I already have in front of my face. So where is your audience and what is already in front of their face? Book marketing, a pitfall number 3 is exclusively marketing your book. And I know that sounds kind of counterproductive, like the point of doing this is to market your book is to get more eyes on your platform, but if you are exclusively marketing your book, then your entire platform is going to look like 24/7 advertisement. No one chooses to watch ads, we are forced to watch ads, and there are some ads that are interesting, funny, captivating that we're invested in, but if you're doing nothing but posting about your launch date, posting your boring things, to say it bluntly, there are things in book marketing that are exciting that you should post. You should post regularly, selling your book and plugging it in. But if you're doing that constantly and the only thing you're ever posting is your book, it's gonna get old fast. Readers are gonna look at a few posts and go, I know what's going on here, I don't need to see anymore. So you wanna share those exciting, interesting moments. You wanna share, your character aesthetic, and you wanna share the mood boards and your cover reveal, and that's all amazing. But there was this awesome source I was looking at earlier that recommended this 5-3-2 rule. I think this is awesome. It's the idea that in every 10 posts you make, so in a set of 10 posts, 5 of your posts should offer value to the reader. The reader should be interested, they should get something from it, even if the thing they're getting is entertainment. It should offer value to the reader of some kind. 3 posts should be marketing your business. In this case, our business is books, so you're either marketing your book, your author platform, something you want them to subscribe to or buy. And then 2 posts should be personal to help you personally connect to your readers and your audience. So 5-3-2. 5 things of value, whether the value is education or humor or interest, 3 things to market whatever it is you're selling, and 2 things to personally connect with your reader out of every 10 posts. Using a system like that will really keep you on track without overwhelming your audience with advertisements 24/7. I think these systems work great, and there are actually a bunch of them. A lot of different creators on different platforms recommend different things. So I would do some extensive research on whatever platform you're using to, grow your audience. What are people doing with that platform to help them grow? A lot of people talk about content pillars, which is like what types of things you talk about. This 5-3-2 method, instead of focusing on those pillars and what we are talking about, we're focusing on what the purpose of each post is. So I recommend doing a lot of research whenever you pick a platform, whether it is a social media platform or you have a website with a newsletter. And if you have a website with a newsletter, you should also have some social media, driving people to that newsletter to get them to sign up. Whichever platform you choose, there's a lot of advice on the internet of how to create systems that work really well. You can always take somebody's system and tweak it to fit yourself. So in this 5-3-2 rule, it's for every 10 posts. Maybe 10 is like a weird number for you, like 10 a week is too many, but 10 a month isn't enough. So maybe it's 10 every 2 weeks. Maybe instead of doing 10, you picked 7 and you did 4, 2, and 1 as your numbers instead of 5, 3, and 2. So take a base system and start using it to post and then tweak it for yourself. I think a lot of creators really need to go through a period of what works for you and what do people respond well to and what do you create well as a person. So this gives you the opportunity to dabble, but also keeps you structured and focused. But remember, this pitfall is all about don't market only your book. Be diverse. Listen to what your audience wants, be a creator who creates content that is interesting, and some of that content's going to be on your book and some of that content is going to be on other things. Book marketing pitfall number 4 is ignoring the importance of metadata. This one sort of makes me laugh because I feel strongly about it, but I also think it's a joke. But generally, metadata is some of the little technical categorizing things that will follow your novel inside different software. Basically, whenever we talk about tropes and ideas, so when people are like the one bed trope or enemies to lovers, those are metadata tags, and places like bookstores and libraries are going to use them to categorize your book. Amazon as well. It's really hard to sum a book up in just a few words, so those interfaces want to make it accessible for people who are interested in your book to find it. They're trying to work with you, but it's one of those things where finding the perfect keyword and, metadata plugs to really attach onto your book, it's not gonna ramp up your sales in any dramatic way. It's not like picking, your perfect 5 adjectives for your book in the library database is gonna skyrocket your sales, which is why it's one of the things that I sort of shake my head at, but I also think is important because not having it is gonna keep your book from being found when people search it. So not having it is going to really hurt your sales, but having it's not really going to do a whole lot for it, but it is also important, if that makes sense. If you're interested in a whole other video about metadata and what it is and how it works, then let me know in the comments below. But it's going to look a little bit different depending on the country you live in and what kind of platform you're looking at. So if you're looking at selling on Amazon versus the bookstore, the metadata is going to be a little bit different there, but think of it like keywords and SEO for websites. Metadata is that information for books. So we don't want to shrug it off. It is definitely important, and it is going to help your book make connections between books that are similar, which is going to help readers find it. It won't be the most monumental change, and it's probably not going to be the most visual or tangibly beneficial thing that you could do for your book, but it will definitely hurt you if you don't. The 5th book marketing pitfall, and this one might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but focusing only on sales. I firmly believe if you focus only on book sales, it's gonna hurt your book marketing, because writing a good book and telling a good story and getting people interested and, leaving reviews and talking about it and reading the second one, it's not all about sales numbers. If you're focused solely on how many people bought my book and you're not looking at what are my ratings or how easily is my book found or how many libraries have my book, if you're only focusing on those sales numbers, I'd be bold enough to say that your goal is very short term. If you want to have a long and successful platform and you want to become a well-known author, you have to think more than just how many books did I sell on the first day, which is something that I think a lot of people sort of fall into. Of course, you want to sell a lot of books, and of course, you want to make good business decisions that are going to help you sell a lot of books. You want to do the right amount of marketing, but you don't want the marketing to be around, am I selling books? Because then you're going to start using kill language, is what I hear a lot of people calling it, where you say, buy my book is free right now, where as soon as you start using certain terms, readers sort of understand that it's just a plug, that it's not a sincere connection, it's not any kind of personal connection, you're not sharing anything interesting about your book, you just want somebody to buy it. And people are going to pick up on that pretty fast, which is why when we were talking about content creating and not marketing your book all the time, it sort of falls into that. You don't want it to be all about the sales, and you want to be able to create content that people find interesting, that make them want to read your book. You could sell 100 copies on day one, but out of those 100 copies you sold, maybe only 5 to 10 people were really interested in reading your book or felt like it might be a good read. And then of those 5 to 10 people, how many people are going to read it, finish it, and then review it? And I honestly firmly believe that whenever people start reviewing and talking about your book is much better marketing than any advertisement you pay for. You might pay for the BookBub ads and the Google ads to get your platform kicked off and to get your book into a couple people's hands, but what's really going to decide is if your book made it or not, is if people in the bookish community are talking about it and recommending it and reviewing it. And you know, a lot of people do say that there's no such thing as bad publicity. Even if somebody's complaining about your book, it means they're talking about it, so people are going to be interested and they're going to read it. That's kind of true, but if you're only focused on the sales and you're constantly pushing, well, buy my book, or, you know, rate my book, check out my website, if you're constantly pushing those things with advertisements, then people aren't going to want to read it and review it even negatively. It puts your book in this sort of like compartmentalized, I'm not emotionally attached and I couldn't care less about you or your story, which is hard to hear. But that's what we're talking about in this video, are mistakes to avoid so that you can have a successful book launch. So don't focus on the numbers, focus on what's going to get people to talk about your book for you, because it's like investing in free marketing further down the line. There is no better marketing than people in the reading community recommending or even just talking about your book. So set yourself up for that free marketing and create material that's going to interest and grab your readers' attention. If you learned anything from this video, or even if you just had a good time, make sure you give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing. I post writing related videos twice a week.